Suppose there's a dog in front of you on a rug. Always the keen observer, you say, the dog is on the rug. Two things about this. First, what you said is true. And second, the truth of what you said is related to the meanings of the words you uttered. Had you said, the dog is on the sofa, you'd have said something false. And now, two observations about these two things. First, it seems, lots of people have thought, that it should be possible to say something useful about what meaning and truth are, which would explain and systematize, if you like, our understanding of these facts. And second, it turns out that this is a hard thing to do. For a long time, serious people have been trying to give a clear account of truth and meaning, but I think it's generally agreed that none has definitively succeeded. The point of this channel is to help resolve this situation. And the point of this video is to give a high-level summary of how this will happen. Specifically, we're looking for answers to questions like, what is the meaning of a word? How do words come by the meanings they have? What's the meaning of a sentence, and how exactly is it related to the meanings of the words in it? What is truth, and how exactly is it related to sentence meaning and the way the world is? The familiar, I think, dominating approach would be to start bottom up by construing word meaning in terms of word-world relations. The meaning of the word or name Fido is the dog Fido. We get from there to sentence meanings by way of a compositional semantics, if you like. With sentence meaning appropriately defined, the way from it and the state of the world to truth may or may not be trivial. Problems, however, arise at all steps. In saying how words must be related to things in order for the meaning relation to hold between them, in detailing a working compositional semantics, and in saying how to arrive at a sentence meaning construct of a sort which can be compared to the world. The impediment to renouncing compositional semantics is that doing so plausibly, though maybe not obviously, implies giving up not just on a certain appealing scientific or quasi-scientific research project in which much has been invested, but on an idea of language and semantics centered on the individual speaker in isolation, an idea which the kind of scientific or quasi-scientific study of semantics would seem to require. I think this is all more or less right, except that we should be giving up on that scientific or quasi-scientific project. It's not needed, and it's arguably not even coherent. So the beginning of a solution is to renounce this bottom-up approach I just referred to. Accepting this frees us to turn the whole traditional project on its head, or rather, as I prefer, to set it on its feet. The approach here is substantive. It says non-trivial things about what truth and meaning are, but it does not share the scientific pretensions of the traditional approach. Specifically, it renounces the idea that semantic theory has anything to contribute to understanding our cognitive or linguistic abilities. This is the job for the neural net theorists who are poised to change our world for good or bad. It starts with truth, or rather the tangible correlate of truth, sentence confidence, instead of word meaning. And it starts with a community of language speakers and ultimately defines truth as a property of, ideal for, linguistic interaction, rather than starting with the individual language speaker. Ultimately, this approach leads to a picture of our relation to the world and one another, free of many of the traditional philosophical problems, albeit one with some intriguing, some would say radical implications. So how does this work? Well, maybe unwisely, I explain the central idea here on this channel by means of a model or thought experiment. The idea is to create a sort of minimal toy world peopled with speakers and to enhance it incrementally to the point where its inhabitants' language has properties tolerably similar to the semantic properties of familiar languages. The model starts with lots of speakers, lots of sentences, understood just as sound sequences, and then imagines that each speaker assigns a number or value between 0 and 1 to each sentence. This number is meant to correlate to the feeling of confidence we have in different claims, with 0 corresponding to definitely not, and 1 corresponding to complete confidence. We don't worry about why the speakers assign these values. Depending on the conceptual level at which you're approaching the model, they're either primitive, unanalyzable facts, or something which the theories of programmers of neural nets will eventually fully explain. And yes, this business of conceptual levels is one of the complicated bits in this whole theoretical approach. Finally, we add to the model a contrived model-only pleasure property associated with some valuable sentences to give speakers an incentive to trade in sentences. The pleasure property is supposed to correlate to the real-world value of knowing truths. With these elements in place, the model can be tweaked a bit to give its sentences a property a lot like truth. First, we make speakers' valuings depend, potentially, not just on the sound sequence spoken, but also on time and place. Second, we make speakers' valuings depend on what other sentences they already value. This has the effect of making what you believe depend on what other things you believe. Third, we stipulate that different speakers can value different sentences differently some of the time, but we have to insist that mostly they agree. And fourth, we require that what a person values is partly, just partly, up to her or him. This allows people to adapt their belief systems, but only a bit. The outcome of all this is that speakers in the model would naturally exchange sentences, so talk to each other, to try to maximize that pleasure property I mentioned. They would evolve a sort of contract whereby they speak their pleasurable sentences with the expectations others would do likewise. And, this is the clever bit, if speakers' valuings are just so, then speakers would find that their best course to individual pleasure maximization would be for everyone mutually to agree that there's just one pleasure maximizing set, and that the contract they have between each other is to contribute to it. And so we get truth. A sentence is true just in case it's in that pleasure maximizing set. One interesting outcome of this model is that dialogue within it emerges as an activity which is both competitive and cooperative. We're all working for ourselves, but we do best for ourselves by working together. Sometimes there are clashes, and when there are, we compete. Sometimes we have to push, other times it seems we just have to fall into line. Truth in the model thus has nothing to do with the way the world is in some crude sense of the world. Nothing to do with word-world relationships as sometimes construed. This frees us up to define word meaning in terms of truth. What we content ourselves with, in fact, is sameness of word meaning, specifically sameness of meaning of a particular utterances of words. And we do this, roughly speaking, by looking at all the true sentences containing a given word on an occasion. Taking this approach, we get precise, non-empty sets of properly synonymous word tokens, but at the same time naturally allow for what's called occasion sensitivity, which is our ability to use words in seemingly arbitrarily flexible ways to talk about things. With sameness of word meaning in place, a concept of same sentence meaning, same proposition, becomes easy to define. Propositions can be understood as nothing more than sets of token sentences. And having rid ourselves of the requirement to explain our cognitive abilities in terms of our grasp of meanings, the usual burdens of such undertakings of informing our understanding of so-called propositional attitudes like belief and desire become much lighter. Propositions and meanings emerge on this understanding of truth as completely benign natural constructs. I'm sure that many would say the approach here has all the advantages of theft over honest work, and that of course it's easy to come up with nice semantic theory if you start by shirking the work that such theorizing is meant to do, namely to understand why we value the sentences we do. My response to this is to urge the compositional semanticists to continue knocking themselves out, if they're inclined to, but to note at the same time, I'm not the only one who thinks they're on a fool's errand, if you like. As Silicon Valley's massive advances over the last decade in language processing make clear, the work they, the compositional semanticists, think they're supposed to be doing can plausibly be done, and again, apparently can only be done, without recourse to a bottom-up understanding of semantic concepts like truth and meaning. Thanks for watching.